Hey friends, welcome to Girls Night. If you've been following along this season, you know that we've been talking about that moment in life when you look around and you go, this is not the life I ordered. The moments in life that don't look the way that we thought they would. This season, we've been talking about the in-between spaces, these chapters where you're standing in the middle of a story you didn't plan for, trying to make sense of who you are and what's next. We've talked about identity shifts, about what happens when the plan changes, about how to get to know yourself again after a big transition. And today we're taking the next step in that conversation because once you've started to find your footing again, there's the next question that always seems to bubble up. And that's, okay, what now? What's next? How do I start dreaming again? So that's what we're diving into today. How to start dreaming again when life hasn't gone exactly how you thought it would. When my twin girls were first born, I don't think I could have dreamed my way out of a paper bag if I tried. Becoming a mom was the hardest transition of my entire life. And the fact that we had two babies at once in the middle of the pandemic lockdown didn't exactly make it any easier. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why my best friend Kelsey and I knew we had to create our course, Becoming Mama. Kelsey's not only one of my wisest friends, she's also a brilliant therapist, and I learn so much from her. And we created the course because while not everyone's transition into motherhood is quite as hard as ours were, no transition into motherhood is easy. We wanted to help women shorten the gap between barely surviving and truly thriving, to help them navigate these first messy, beautiful, disorienting months with practical tools and real emotional support. That's what we do in the course. In Becoming Mama, we help you prepare emotionally, relationally, financially, and practically, all for motherhood. And along the way, we don't just tell you what's coming, we help you become the mother you want to be from the inside out. I so wish I'd had this course when I was making that transition, but since I can't go back and give it to myself, I've made sure that I can give it to you. Anyway, so for more than a year, the dreaming part of my brain went completely offline. I was just trying to survive, just trying to keep my girls alive. Everything else in me just shut off. And it didn't turn back on magically one day. It's been a slow process, this gradual combination of two different things. The first is that my capacity has increased. I've gotten better at this, stronger, more capable than I was when we first started out. Oh my gosh, like 5 years ago. It's almost been 5 years. I've said this before, but when the girls were first born, I did not know how to change a diaper. I had to learn. And now I am convinced that I could put a diaper on anything, like truly anything. When my girls became toddlers, I similarly had no idea how to handle their sudden particularities. Like, I need the blue cup, not the purple cup. No, not that lid, and their tantrums. And now, like most moms, I have truly State Department level skills in both diplomacy and negotiation. But I didn't come out this way. I've been growing throughout the years. And again, that's why Kelsey and I created Becoming Mama, to help shorten the time it takes to go from this barely surviving to really thriving as a new parent. But the second thing that's changed is my circumstances. I'm no longer feeding my babies with a syringe. Yes, that was a season of our lives, like they do with the tiny animals at the zoo. Now I can toss them a chicken nugget and let them go nuts. It's amazing. In fact, now sometimes they even go to the refrigerator, open it, and get some food for themselves. It is wild. Note, they're not at the point where they can get very much by themselves, and they usually make a gigantic mess. We're working on it. So my capacity's increased, though, and my circumstances have gotten easier. And as that's happened more and more, I've gotten to start wondering, okay, what's next? How do you start dreaming again after survival mode? How do you start imagining what life could look like once your energy isn't going towards just getting through the day? How do you look up at the horizon now that you're not constantly just looking at your feet, reminding yourself, okay, one step at a time. Okay, just one more step forward. And maybe the hardest question of all is, how do you dream again after disappointment? When you thought that this thing was going to work out and it didn't. When you thought this relationship was finally going to be the one and it wasn't. When you got your hopes up for that opportunity or that job, only to watch it fall apart. Well, here's the first thing I want to remind us of. And honestly, it's something I have to keep reminding myself of too, like over and over and over and over again. Just because you put yourself out there, just because you gave it a shot, you flipped the coin, and you got tails a handful of times, it doesn't mean you're actually more likely to get tails again. Every time you flip a coin, there's a 50-50 chance it lands on heads. But that's not how it feels, right? When we've had disappointment after disappointment, rejection after rejection, we start to build a story around it. We take it personally. We think, okay, that's 3 disappointments in a row. I must not be cut out for this. Or everything I touch seems to fall apart. I guess I'm just not good enough. But the truth is, that's not how probability works. If you flip a coin and it lands on tails 10 times in a row, the odds that the next flip will be heads are still 50-50. Every single flip is a brand new start. That's not just math. That's true in life too. Your past attempts don't make you less likely to succeed. In fact, I'd say they make you more likely to succeed because you've learned a few things. Thomas Edison has this famous quote about him inventing the light bulb, and he says, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." A string of bad luck or a string of disappointments, they're not always a predictor of what's going to come next. And so with every new opportunity, or every new idea, every new relationship, we have this choice. We can look at it and say, what if it fails? Or we can flip that question over and say, yeah, but what if it works? What if this time it actually works? What if that one idea, that one message, that one connection, that one date, that one attempt at trying to get pregnant is the one that changes everything? What if your next flip is the one that finally lands heads up? You won't know until you try again. So the second thing I want to talk about is this. Failure or rejection do not mean you're unworthy. This has been one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, and honestly, it's one that I'm still learning. Every time I try something that doesn't go the way that I hoped, there's this voice in my head that says, okay, that's a sign. That's God telling me I'm not supposed to do this anymore. Or maybe my readers or listeners are quietly voting me off the island. Maybe it's time. It's such an easy jump to make, right? Something doesn't go well, and suddenly it's not just this thing that failed, it's me. It's been one of my biggest struggles over the last 13 years of doing this work. But here's what I've had to learn over and over and over and over and over and over again, is that your batting average is never going to be 100. Even the best players in the world miss shots. Even the most talented entrepreneurs, artists, and writers have projects that flop. If you look at professional baseball players, for example, the elite ones, they strike out more than half the time. A great hitter, might have a batting average of 300, which means that 7 out of 10 times they miss, they don't succeed. And yet they're still considered the best in the world. That stat always gets me because if the greatest in the world are missing more often than they're succeeding, how in the world am I going to expect perfection from myself? And that brings me to one of my favorite examples. It's something I call the rule of 200. So when I was in college, I wanted nothing more than to be a broadcast journalist. I wanted to be on the Today Show or be the next Oprah, or sometimes I wanted to be like Christiane Amanpour and tell really big stories about hard things going on around the world. Well, one day a guest speaker came to our class and she was just a beloved journalist in Denver that everybody adored. And she told us that day the story of how she got her first job, and it completely transformed the way that I think about rejection. She said that she sent her resume tape to 200 TV stations before one finally hired her. 200. Some wanted someone with more experience. Some wanted a man. Some wanted a blonde. Some had already had someone in mind. Some of them just lost her tape. It got lost on their desk somewhere. But eventually, one person said yes, and that yes was all she needed. Her story changed everything for me, because it reminded me that rejection isn't personal, it's just part of the process. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but anything worth doing is worth fighting for, even if it takes 200 tries. And so if you've been rejected, or if something you've poured your heart into fell through, please hear this. and again, I'm saying this to myself as much as anybody else, this doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean you're behind. It doesn't mean you're unworthy. It just means you're in the middle of your 200. And your yes, your breakthrough could be the very next one. I've been noodling on this idea for the last handful of years. And this is just my theory. So don't I don't know. You can write it down if you want to, but it's just my theory. But my theory is that success is about 50% talent and 50% tenacity. The people who make it in life, in whatever category we're talking about, aren't just the most gifted. They're the ones who don't quit. The thing is, we can't always control how talented we are and compared to everybody else, but we can control our tenacity. We can't always be the most talented person in the room, but we can be the one who keeps showing up. We can decide to be the last person standing. And that matters because talent gets you started and gets you a lot of the way there. But tenacity gets you through your 200. So I have this friend who is like the least afraid of rejection person I've ever met. She applies for all of the giveaways and sweepstakes. She sends wild emails to people or pitches ideas that most of us would never have the courage or really the creativity to think of. She just lives her life with this what if mindset. Not what if it fails, but what if this works? Why not? And that's inspired me so much because she's right. She has a 0% chance of something amazing happening if she doesn't even try. And she's actually not the only person in my life who's like that. My best friend's mom is the exact same way. She's a total why not ask kind of person. That's actually how my best friend and I once ended up front row at a Backstreet Boys concert. When everyone else assumed that those seats were just impossible to get, her mom said, well, we might as well ask. And truly, I don't know how she made this happen, but one minute we were way up in the cheap seats and next we were standing front row screaming, I want it that way at the top of our lungs. That's just who she is. And because of that, my best friend has had the most incredible adventures her whole life, all because her mom just kept asking the questions the rest of us were too nervous to ask out loud. That why not ask energy is the energy I want to carry into dreaming again and honestly carry through my whole life. Because truly, what's the worst that can happen? You don't hear back? Someone says no? You try something and it doesn't land the way you hoped? Okay, you'll survive that. You already have. But what's the best that could happen? What if that email gets a yes? What if the idea lands in just the right hands? Or what if the dream you've been holding on to so quietly actually works? The possibilities are endless. And maybe, just maybe, the best things in life happen when we're willing to ask the question, why not me? Now, here's where it gets tricky. At least where it feels the trickiest for me right now. Our world feels crazy right now. The pace of change feels wild. Every time I open the news, I feel like I should be surprised by all the things that have happened in just 24 hours, but somehow I'm fully surprised and not surprised all at the same time. There's just a lot going on. Some days when I try to think ahead or, do some planning for our lives or our family, I think 5 or 10 years from now, how am I supposed to even know what I'm doing with my life or our lives if I don't have a clue what our world will be like? I really don't know. It's hard to dream when the ground keeps shifting under our feet. There used to be this sense, I think for a long time there was this sense of, well, that's just the way that things are done. You go to school, you get the job, you follow the plan. There were tracks, and if you stayed on the tracks, things mostly worked out. But that's changing, and it's changing fast. The way things have always been done doesn't seem to exist anymore. And honestly, some days to me, that feels completely terrifying. On those days, I take my anxiety medication and remind myself it's okay not to know. It's okay not to have a 10-year plan. It's okay to just focus on today. But then on other days, I still take my anxiety medication and then ask myself, if we really are living in totally unprecedented times, and if we can't have the precedented back, well, then what can we do? Well, I think we can take some of that uncertainty and some of that, the guardrails are off, folks, kind of energy, and use it as an excuse to get creative, to reimagine how we work, how we love, how we raise our kids, how we rest, how we dream. Maybe the world is changing. Yes. But maybe that's also our cue to get curious, to ask, what's actually important to me? If we don't have to do things just because that's the way they've always been done, then what do we want to do? Dreaming doesn't have to mean a 5-year plan or a perfect vision board. It can simply mean paying attention to what makes your heart beat faster, to the moments when something sparks or stirs or whispers, like maybe that's for me. Maybe that could be for me. That's where new dreams start, not in certainty, but in curiosity. And maybe that's all we need right now. Not a master plan, just the courage to stay curious about what could still be possible. So what do you do if you're sitting here thinking, okay, Steph, but I don't even know what I'm dreaming about anymore? First of all, you're not alone in that. Most of us have had to relearn how to dream after a hard season. It's a muscle. And if you haven't used it for a while, well, of course, it feels a little weak and wobbly. So if that's where you are, here are a few gentle ways to begin. First, you don't have to go back to your old dreams. Your dreams are allowed to change, even the big ones. And honestly, that can feel really uncomfortable. Sometimes we look at the things we used to want and think, well, what happened to me? Why don't I want that anymore? And it's okay to grieve that, to miss the version of yourself who wanted that thing so badly. You can honor what she hoped for and still release it. You don't have to go back to who you were before. You get to learn to listen to who you're becoming now. And the dreams that fit this version of you might look totally different from the ones that fit her. You can grieve that shift and celebrate it. Because it's not loss, it's growth. So the second thing you can do is to follow the breadcrumbs. Those small sparks of curiosity, those tiny moments of desire, those are clues. They may not look like dreams at first. They might look like random thoughts or little moments of energy or joy or interest that seem to come out of nowhere. But those are worth paying attention to. I always write them down, even if they seem silly or random. A place I want to visit, a conversation topic I can't stop thinking about, a project idea that makes me nervous in the very best way. And over time, I start to see patterns. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this kind of gentle dreaming is that it doesn't happen in one lightning bolt of clarity. It happens slowly over time, like a mosaic coming together piece by piece. A lot of us think our next dream has to come in some big, dramatic, aha moment. But it usually shows up as breadcrumbs, little pieces of evidence pointing you towards something that's meant for you next. So when something lights you up, even just a little, write it down. Don't demand to know why it matters yet. Just collect it. Because clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It's collected over time. You'll find it by noticing what lights you up and letting those little moments lead you somewhere new. The third thing you can do is start a someday list. Totally low stakes, judgment-free. Just jot down anything that makes you go, ooh, that could be fun someday. There's no pressure to act on it right now. You're just creating a space where possibility can live. Because sometimes the simple act of writing something down is what brings it to life. It's a way of acknowledging that little spark and saying, I see you. And here's the thing. We spend so much time making to-do lists. But this one is a want-to list. It's not about productivity or performance. It's about paying attention to desire, that deep, quiet part of you that still wants things. And even if you never cross a single thing off, the list still matters. Because it reminds you that you're someone who dreams, someone who imagines, someone who still has a future that's unfolding. When you start giving those little someday ideas a place to live, you're telling your heart, hey, it's safe to dream again. So the fourth thing that you can do is you can try my best friend Kelsey's reflection. It's one of my favorite things that she asks. She says, what would I love to try even if it doesn't work? And I love this question because it takes all the pressure off. It invites curiosity back into the room. It lets you play again. When we've been through disappointment or heartbreak, we start to believe that every move we make has to be the right one, that we can't afford another failure, that we've used up our chances. But that's not true. This question lets you take a breath and remember that trying is enough. Because sometimes the point isn't whether something works. Sometimes the point is just that you showed up. You showed up for yourself again. That you took a chance. That you let hope back in. That you gave permission to yourself to experiment, to explore, to just see what might happen. And even if it doesn't work, even if it flops, you'll have learned something about yourself in the process. You know a little bit more about what feels right and what doesn't. And honestly, that's how we rebuild trust with ourselves. By trying things and realizing, oh, I can handle it when it doesn't work out. That's what brings your confidence and your creativity back online. And then finally, here's the last thing I want you to try. Let other people's stories inspire possibility instead of comparison. This one's tricky, right? Because it is so easy to look at somebody else's highlight reel and think, oh, well, she's figured it out and I'm behind. Or good for her, but that will never happen for me. But when someone else's life sparks something in you, that doesn't have to be envy. It can be a clue. That's your own dream stirring, trying to get your attention. It's that little whisper that says, hey, maybe something like that could be for me too. Comparison tells us that someone else's dream means there's less room for yours, or that if she gets something, it means there's less to go around. But possibility says, if she can have that, maybe I can too, in my own way. So when you see someone thriving, it doesn't have to make you feel small. It can make you feel a sense of possibility. And here's what I've learned. When we start celebrating other people's dreams, like really celebrating them, it makes more space for our own. It shifts something inside us from scarcity to hope. So when you see someone doing something that lights a spark in you, don't scroll past it with shame or cynicism. Pause for a second. Notice what it stirs up. That little tug might be your next breadcrumb. Because again, dreaming isn't about forcing clarity. It's about paying attention to the hints, the nudges, and the little moments of joy and curiosity that keep tugging at your sleeve. That's how a new dream begins, one breadcrumb at a time. Friend, dreaming isn't naive. It's brave. It's how we partner with God to co-create something new. It's how we remind ourselves that this isn't the end of our story. This whole not what I ordered season has been about exactly that. Learning how to live and hope and build again in the middle of the plot twist. It's about realizing that even if life doesn't look the way that we planned, it doesn't mean it's over. It might just mean it's unfolding differently and maybe beautifully in ways we couldn't have imagined before. So if you've been in survival mode or feeling disappointed or just unsure where to start, this week, try one small dreaming step forward. Write down one thing that sounds fun. Send a bold email. Apply for the thing. Take the next tiny step that helps you feel awake in your own life again. Because that's really what dreaming is. It's faith in motion. It's believing that God still sees you, still has good plans for you, and that there's still something ahead worth moving towards, even if you don't know what it is yet. And maybe that's the quiet invitation of this whole season, to loosen your grip on the plan, to stay curious, and to keep walking forward into a life that, while it might not be what you ordered, could still turn out to be something really, really beautiful. Friends, thank you so much for joining me for Girls Night. We'll be back next week with another episode. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, I would love it if you do two quick things. The first is to subscribe. Subscribing to the show is the best way to bookmark the podcast. That way you'll be the first to know when a new episode releases. It won't send you an email or anything. It'll just show up in your podcast player when a new episode comes out. And the second thing is it would mean so much to me if you would leave a rating and a review for the show. So it would mean so much to me if you would take just a second to leave a rating and a review in your favorite podcast listening app. And thank you so much to all of you who've left those beautiful 5-star reviews already. It really means the world to me. All right, friend, that's it. That's all we have for today, but I'll see you here next week for another episode of Girls Night.